Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Speedrun Insider. I'm your host, CJitsallGewd. I have a very special guest with me this week. I've had this one marked down. I say that a lot. And I know that I say that a lot, but I do. I'm aware of it. But this is actually one that I've had written down since the beginning. I said to myself, no, CJ, you can't just go all in from the beginning. You have to build. You have to have somewhere to build to. The song can't be guitar solo front to back. That's just a guitar solo. That's not a song. And I'm trying to write a song. And in the spirit of music, I have a guest that will help us bridge the gap for all of you musical fans out there. He's my favorite apparatic operative. The self-described wrestling heel of speedrunning. His Ratchet and Clank speedrunning might be right up your arsenal, as it is mine. It's the one, the only, Zem. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, CJ. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I am blowing smoke, but I'm not when I say circled since the beginning. Very excited to have you on.
Yeah, that was a hell of an intro. I didn't know what to expect, but that was equal parts interesting to hear and very flattering. So thank you for that.
I'm not Michael Buffer, but I get by.
I don't know who that is, so I'm just going to assume that that's somebody most people do know.
He's the guy that goes, let's get ready to rumble. Yep.
Gotcha. So, okay. So one of those voices that you've known your entire life, but just never knew the name of the guy who did it.
Exactly. There's a word for that for, like a ditty or a song.
Mm-hmm.
There's an actual English word for it. Someone like me, but not me, who would actually be prepared to know the word, but they don't. So, speaking of things that we're prepared for, let's talk about. A lot of things I want to cover. I want to talk about your singing. I want to talk about your gaming. I want to talk about your speedrunning. I want to talk about your GDQs, your IOUs, all that fun stuff. But I want to start with, take me back, Little Zem. Little Zam, growing up in a farm in Iowa, or, whatever flyover state that you grew up on. Tell me your early influences for video games and what you played when you were growing up.
Sure. So I grew up in backwoods Pennsylvania, just to be specific about that.
West Virginia?
Essentially. It actually is very similar to West Virginia. Backwoods Pennsylvania is very gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful places if you get the chance to take a road trip. I would never recommend stopping anywhere in Pennsylvania except for maybe Pittsburgh or Philadelphia. But traveling through Pennsylvania, even though it's a massive state, it's absolutely breathtaking. There's so many sights you'll see in PA you'll never see anywhere else. But that being said, it's also incredibly boring. So it made a lot of sense that I gravitated toward video games very early on, because I had an older brother growing up who was a very competitive person. And I didn't have a lot of friends that were easy to see because I lived in a kind of a tucked away gated community that was about a half hour away from all of my actual real life friends. Mm-hmm. So the easiest way for me to spend my time every single day was just, boot up the consoles and play some games and, I don't know, just have a good time with it and challenge myself in ways that I found stimulating or exciting, So my earliest memories are actually, I want to say I was maybe 4 years old is when I started playing games. I remember the first game I ever played was with my brother, who, again, he's 8 years older than me. So, we would play games from a very young, or I would play games from a very young age with him, but it was never close because, a 4-year-old is never going to stand a chance against any 12-year-old, regardless of skill. Sure. And we played Street Fighter 2. That was the first game I ever remember playing, and he kicked my ass over and over and over and over and over. And this would be the common trend whenever we would play any game. In fact, after a while, he stopped letting me play games with him because it was just too boring for him. I remember, and also I just annoyed the crap out of him. So, as little brothers do. But I remember even from a very young age, I just really loved playing video games. They were captivating. They were so much fun, no matter how much time you put into it or or what kind of game it was. It was always like uncovering a new world, especially as a young kid, like
Yeah, absolutely.
where else are you going to experience that? Certainly not in backwoods Pennsylvania. I mean, you could go outside, but eventually all the trees and rocks start to look the same.
Mm-hmm. As someone that grew up sort of in not middle of nowhere New York, but upstate New York, and your experience is really resonating with me.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say, just to clarify my West Virginia joke, if you've ever been through Pennsylvania, and this is to everyone at home, it really does feel like it's Pittsburgh and Philadelphia as bookends,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's a lot of West Virginia.
Yeah,
like that. It's totally different, and 100% right. One of my favorite road trips I ever did, against conventional wisdom, I did not go through Jersey to get through Virginia. We ended up going through the Poconos. Beautiful.
That's
Absolutely
right around
stunning.
where I lived. That's pretty much where I grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town called Hawley, but I mean it's literally a stone's throw away from the Poconos. I mean, people would go skiing and snowboarding all the time, and Scranton was right nearby as well. So, all those little areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I 100% agree. That's normally where in Pennsylvania, we always say it's Pittsburgh and Philadelphia with Kentucky in the middle, but West Virginia is essentially the same state anyway. So that I think the analogy still works.
Kentucky, and for the people that haven't been through Kentucky and West Virginia, you may want to lump those two together, but it is a world different. So maybe Kentucky is a compliment. Kentucky may be the more flattering state to compare to. I'm kidding to all those Kentuckians out there, all dozen of you that are listening to this program.
Yeah, like all 10 who like exist in the world.
So, do you remember what character your brother would kick your ass with?
What I remember, he loved E Honda. He loved playing E Honda, and I always played Ryu. And even to this day, in every Street Fighter game, I always play Ryu, no matter what. I don't play a whole lot of Street Fighter, mind you, but I actually am a big fan of fighting games still. If there's one thing I actually really appreciate in competitive gaming, I've never been the kind of person who grinded a lot of tech skill which is kind of ironic given the nature of speedrunning. Mm-hmm. But it's mostly just because I don't really play a whole lot of fighting games. And so what I kind of, my strong suit and what I tend to rely on when I play is being able to out mind game, out psychology the other person. That's my MO whenever I play fighting games. And so I tend to like very simple characters like Ryu, because a lot of his stuff is very easy to string together and it's very easy to punish mistakes, especially, it's always fun beating people who you have no right beating because they're clearly the more technically minded player and they've clearly had more experience. But I just love that, in fighting games, the mental aspect of it is so powerful. And maybe that's also because I grew up the son of a therapist. So maybe it's easier for me to get inside people's heads than other people might. But
nice and cozy in there.
Yeah, exactly. No, I play a lot of Melee as well. I play like maybe a couple weeks out of the year, usually just during GDQs. But it's always so much fun. I play strictly Marth and Sheik, who are known for being kind of newbie characters. And, I just kind of rely on just tilting the absolute crap out of people and making them do dumb stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's basically the stuff that my brother would do to me growing up, because I used to have a very bad temper, and sometimes I still do. I'll admit it. Like I don't think anybody ever has their composure 100% of the time, but certainly I'm better off now than I was at any point in my childhood. I remember my brother would beat me mercilessly, and I would like kick and scream and rage all the time. So I think after years of him just kind of it's almost like the Justin Wong clip, the you're gonna learn today, like that's kind of like what my brother did to me every single day of my life, and eventually I finally learned.
I grew up. My sister was 6 years older than me, and she didn't. We didn't have Street Fighter. We had Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Genesis, and man. just getting mercilessly just beat over and over again. My brother is 17 years older than I am.
Oh my God.
And when I was 8, he checked me on the basketball court. And I thought I died. He was 25.
Holy crap.
I think about that moment all the time. I'm like, you're not supposed to check an 8-year-old. Like, I had the wherewithal at age 8 to be like, there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
But no, I do. I feel you in that the simplicity. I like to beat people with Little Mac and Smash Ultimate.
Yeah, you're one of those kind of people, I see.
Hey, listen, hey, man. You know, you can't say those kind of people. You don't pay dues in the club.
No, I think looking back on my childhood, it also makes sense that I would love, out mind gaming people because I grew up. I was always the short kid growing up. And even now I'm not short. I'm like 5'9", 5'10", but so I'm like average height for Americans. I guess if you're European, I'm considered short. But I remember growing up, I hit puberty like pretty late in the game. I think I hit it around like 15. And I was always like the shrimpy tiny kid. And so I would always get like physically beat around by like all these people in sports. And that just reminded me, I remember my dad did something similar to me in basketball when I was growing up. I was like maybe 8 years old and I like annoyed him for some reason. Like I forget what I said, but like I said something that upset him and he just like kept like shoulder checking me and like putting posters on me and like dunking the ball over me. I was like, what do you want from me? I'm 8 years old. So I completely understand your pain.
He went full Karl Malone.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Put you up on a poster.
Yeah, exactly.
I do want to, I guess I want to jump to this right now. And we'll try and go linearly. So you have an interest, you went to school for it, obviously, but for those of you that may have not listened earlier, you're an opera singer.
Yeah.
You went to school for it. You went to graduate school, right?
Yep, I have 2 degrees in the actual degree is called vocal performance. You'll never find a degree that's strictly called opera. But yeah, usually vocal performance is the terminology. I got my undergrad in vocal performance at Carnegie Mellon. I got my graduate degree in vocal performance and literature, which is the same thing but with a fancier title at the University of Illinois. So yeah, and I just graduated 6 months ago, back in May.
Personally, I prefer Honeydew Melon to Carnegie Mellon, but that's neither here nor there. So you're a young man and you're in the backwoods of Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
and you're small and you hit puberty late. I'm curious what your experience was like growing up. Because were you musically inclined when you were younger too? Was that something that you took to?
So my family was not a musical family. It's a bit of a complicated story, and I don't mind getting into it. But essentially, I've never met my biological dad, but my biological dad's side of the family is the musical side. Okay. And so he was a very accomplished piano player. His mother, my paternal grandmother, she was also an opera singer for a large part of her life. So it was I guess genetically, I'm not a scientist. I don't know how all that works, but the lineage is there. However, like I said, I never met my dad. I never met that side of the family, and my maternal side of the family, my mom's side. I mean, my mom played piano as a kid, but that was really about it. Music was never a big part of my family life growing up. It was just kind of something that I kind of really ended up gravitating toward. I really loved it even from the very beginning. And it was, there comes a territory when you grow up in backwoods Pennsylvania. If you are involved in music, yes, people have a lot of mean things to say about you, a lot of homophobic stuff. Usually, they say a lot of derogatory terms that are they basically just say outright, they call you gay, they call you all this stuff, just because you're involved in music and not sports. And like, there is this whole like hyper masculinity thing going on in backwoods Pennsylvania. I think a lot of these guys feel like they have a lot to prove, because there isn't a whole lot going on. But it was kind of interesting, even though I did kind of suffer a lot of ridicule for it. It was not like I was ever really interested in sports to begin with. So it was kind of like one of those things where the more I would get made fun of, the more determined I would be to actually like give myself over to music.
Yeah.
And so, I think the only sport I ever really played in throughout grade school was tennis. I still love tennis to this day, but I don't get to play it very often. But yeah, I'm mostly a spectator at this point. However, all throughout, I remember I joined choir in 4th grade, and even despite, the ridicule starts young.
Yes.
I knew that people would make fun of me even for joining choir, and I never wanted to stand out. I never wanted to be known as somebody who could sing, because I knew it would open. I also grew up Jewish, which I at this point I would consider myself a Jewish atheist. I still believe in the traditions of Jewish culture, but I don't really have any sort of faith or ties to a higher power of any sort.
Okay.
But that being said, when you grow up Jewish in backwoods Pennsylvania as well, that is also not good. So essentially, a lot of my upbringing was being small, being Jewish, and being in music made me a lot of people's targets. And so I kind of turned away from a lot of the stuff that most people were doing, and I did turn towards music. I started, like I said, I started in 4th grade. I started in choir, but I didn't really want to stand out. And then at one point, I remember, because I always was a competitive person because of the way that my brother and I played games with each other. I remember hearing other people sing solos in 4th grade, and I thought I was full of regret because I never auditioned for these solos. But then I said to myself, I could be singing these better than these people. Why am I not auditioning? And so I did it anyway, despite my fears and my reticence. And I remember my teacher giving me a lot of very positive feedback. She's like, "Oh yeah, you have a very pretty voice and all this other stuff." And I was like, "Oh," it made my
Sure.
little heart go pitter patter.
Yeah.
And I kind of ended up sticking with it. And it was really one of the only things. I mean, I joined band at one point as well. I kind of got a little bit more into music. But really choir was the only one that ever resonated with me. So I remember things kind of took off in high school when I joined show choir and chamber choir. Those are the two like elite choirs in my high school. And I would also do the honors choirs. They always had like these competitions for, you start at the district level and then you go to regionals and then states and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the first like really gratifying moments I ever had with music. And I realize I'm kind of riffing at this point, but I figure you'll just do whatever you want with this anyway. So I hope you don't mind that I'm riffing a little bit.
Well, just keep going.
But I remember that it was 10th grade. You couldn't audition for these honors choirs until 10th grade. And I remember there was a reputation at my school where, all these amazing singers that I knew in the years above me, they would try really, really hard and they wouldn't be able to get through to district choir, or they wouldn't be able to get past that to regional choir. And then state choir was like the be all end all. And all these people who were older than me, there was one girl, she was really, really amazing. I remember she went in for singing eventually when she graduated and went to college, but she was a senior when I was a freshman. And after like a few years of trying, she ended up making state choir, and it was this whole big deal for our school. And so I remember I really wanted to try super hard to get as far as I could. And I remember, they have like certain placings where if you get like 10th at the initial audition, you move on from the district choir to the regional choir. And then you have to like get like, I don't know, it gets more and more selective as you go up. But I remember, I tried so hard and I practiced my music every single day, and I ended up making it all the way to state choir my sophomore year, which, at the time, there had maybe been a couple people in my entire school's history who had ever done that. And so, I didn't really have a whole lot of training in this. This is something, I never took voice lessons. My family couldn't really afford that. And so I was just kind of rolling with it. So was it something I was very inclined toward from a young age? I would say probably, yeah. Despite all odds, it's a very strange set of circumstances that leads me down the path of music, but somehow I ended up kind of clicking with it. And then when I ended up getting to college, I realized that the reason I was able to learn music so quickly is because I have something called perfect pitch, which means that basically the easiest way to describe perfect pitch is that if you play a note on the piano, I can tell you what note it is. And if you ask me to sing like an A natural, like do, that's an A natural. Like I can just like pull that out of thin air and tell you that's an A natural. And I think that is what ended up really helping me out when I was a kid, because I could learn music like that, and that was a big advantage in these sorts of things. And eventually, what kind of led me into college was I wanted to be a mathematician for as long as I could remember. But then I kind of realized that I don't really love math. I just was good at it, and I really loved singing. And so I figured I'll give singing a shot, and if it doesn't work out, I can always switch into math. And I ended up getting into a few really good schools, and I went to Carnegie. I ended up choosing Carnegie Mellon in the end, and the rest is, as they say, that.
All right. One of the things I was getting at was, and it's still stigmatized today. I'm not trying to lessen that, but I feel like there's a lot more open love for people that are LGBTQIA plus. I hope I got all the letters in there.
I think you did, yeah.
I do try to be inclusive. But there is something to be said that I think the generation before, the current generation, maybe when we were going through, primary school, especially growing up in more remote areas of our great nation, there is a stigma. There is a stigma that you can't be involved in music, or as in my case, it was art, and be heterosexual.
Yep.
Right? Those two things, mutually exclusive. And I had long hair when I was a kid. I have long hair again. But it was pretty bad. I cut it off in high school because it was merciless to deal with. But, it's like, you really feel like, you almost, I don't know if, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but this was an experience for me. I'm wondering if you had it. People, when they beat you down that hard,
yeah,
two things happen. One, you start to wonder if they're right, which can be really frustrating and troubling for a young kid.
Yeah.
To like have that unnecessarily called into question for you. Like, it's one thing if you're experimenting or you're thinking about it yourself.
Yeah.
But to have that forced on you when you don't want it to is frustrating. But this too, that you have to show them you're not.
Yeah.
But the performance of it for the people that think that you're gay, is proof that you are, right? So it's very frustrating. It's like, okay, well, I'll just be more hetero. Well, it's like, no, that's proof that you're gay, though, right? Because it makes no sense. If you're listening to this at home and you're hearing me be an idiot, that's what this was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
It's entirely stupid, and I want to get this on the record before I let you say anything really quickly.
Sure.
I hate that approach. I hate that stigma, but it was real. And it was real for people like me. I'm interested if it was real for you. But if you're listening at home, I just want to let you know, regardless of your orientation, you are loved and you are accepted. But I would be lying, and it would be an omission of history if I didn't say that I made choices in my life so that people would think that I was straight.
Yeah,
and I am. Oh, I am for the people at home. So that's where I'm at. That's where we are in this conversation. So I'm curious. I guess the actual question: did you make choices in your life to kind of make that stop? Because you also said you hit puberty late. You were younger. You were smaller. You're an average height now. I'm sure you were a short kid then. Yeah. I mean, on top of that, and on top of being in this kind of area, which is more like Kentucky than it is like Philadelphia, I mean, that's got to be incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, and I, of course, I want to be as clear as possible in case there was any sort of ambiguity with the way that I presented the information in the first place, that I have always tried to do what I can to be an ally. And, I am not a member of the LGBTQ plus community. But I have absolutely no problems with, the way that anybody chooses to express themselves with gender or sexuality. I think it's actually very cool that nowadays it is much more accepted, and kids these days really don't care about that sort of thing. I think a lot of people in this world take that for granted. But yeah, I mean, we definitely, we grew up around the same time and in a similar sort of area. I experienced the exact same thing where it's just like, for some reason, masculinity is tied to heterosexuality. And if you are gay in these pockets of America, you are seen as worse. And personally, I kind of was a bit of a recluse when I was growing up. I know that may come as a shock as somebody who makes a full-time living playing video games all day. But yeah, no, I remember I was not very good with women in the first place. And I was the kind of person who was always very shy. I never really knew how to approach women or talk to women. And, my friends, of course, they didn't care either way. And they all knew that, I had a lot of difficulty communicating with women and, trying to, navigate my budding sexual desires and whatnot. But yeah, it's you definitely feel like you have to prove something for sure. Even if you don't want to be a part of it, you're still proving that you don't want to be a part of it. There's always some sort of hoop you had to jump through to justify who you are and what you were about. It was so funny. I have an experience from when I first went to college. Carnegie Mellon is a very, very liberally minded school. And I grew up in backwoods PA, which is not, I never really paid that much attention to the politics of backwoods PA. But if I had paid attention to it, I would have seen that it was certainly a much more traditional conservative area. Where that sort of stuff was a big deal growing up. But when I got to college, I started meeting all these people who were different than me. And I finally got to experience diversity, and I'm very grateful for that. But I remember that there was one experience where I found out that the senior voice majors kept a list of all the incoming freshmen my freshman year called the Gay by May list. Which is all the people that they thought would come out of the closet before the end of the year, because a lot of people have to go through the same thing and they're not allowed to be themselves until they gain their independence. And I remember when I found out about the existence of the Gay by May list, I freaked out because I was like, oh my god, do they think I'm gay? Am I actually like secretly gay and I just never knew the whole time, and these people can see something in me that I can't see in myself?
Yeah.
And I remember there was a 2-week period where I was legitimately terrified that my entire sexuality had been thrown for a loop. And then it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, wait a minute, I'm not attracted to men. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, well, then I'm not gay. Okay, great.
It's honestly cleared that away. It's honestly the exact experience. That's exactly what it feels like. You're like, are people seeing in me something that I cannot see in myself?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the questioning of your own identity, and it is hurtful when it's sexual orientation. It's hurtful when it's about your appearance. It's hurtful when it's about any part of your personality.
Absolutely.
Because people are seeing something in you that's not there. They're projecting a lot of the time.
Yes,
not definitely. To get too psychological, but they're putting something on you, right? They're putting a weight on you and it's a burden, one, but two, the weirdest thing about it is it's like, I worked at a job, and one of my coworkers said to me one day, my gaydar goes off when you're around. And I'm like, well, you should get it checked because I'm in a committed relationship. And she was like, you could be having sex with a woman on my desk at work, and I still wouldn't believe you're straight. I said, do you understand what being gay means?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, if nothing else, it would lend itself to the conclusion that maybe I would go both ways, but certainly it would dispel the idea that I was gay. Like, just the idea, like, I could watch you have heterosexual intercourse with a woman in front of me, and I still wouldn't believe you. It's like, what? you know?
Yeah.
So if there's anyone out there questioning your orientation, Google what a dick looks like. If it doesn't do anything for you, and don't look at your own, because that doesn't. Everyone thinks theirs is okay. Go look for someone else's genitals, and let that decision be your guide. You know.
Yeah, and I actually, once again, I actually do think it's so cool that people just don't really even care anymore. Like, I mean, and if they do, it says more about them than it does about you at this point.
Well, let me jump in really quick, because the fight is not over for them.
That's true. That's true. Yeah,
but
I shouldn't be.
If people are more open now than they were then, which means that we're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, I think more people are indifferent now.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it. Yeah, for sure.
Because it's like most of the people that I talk to, about anything, their ideology falls somewhere in between of like, I don't understand why people care about X or Y.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, why do people care about who you love? Why do people care about what you do with your own body? And so I feel like there's a move towards indifference.
Yeah.
But there is still that there. And I know that that's what you meant.
Yeah.
So I wanted to jump in front of you really quick.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I mostly I was still thinking back to how like the large majority of kids these days don't care about that sort of thing anymore. But I definitely forgot that there are still a lot of people in this world who are struggling with being accepted by their older loved ones, or even, it doesn't even have to necessarily be older, but people do struggle finding acceptance from people close to them, and that's obviously a shame. But it is really cool to see at the very least that it seems like society is moving in the right direction in regards to sexuality. And it'll take a lot of time before we really get to, I'm not going to make speculation. There's no point.
Right. But the road to the utopia is long and riddled and windy and bumpy, but it's a road that we could be on.
Yeah.
I do want to jump back really quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when did you go to Carnegie Mellon?
I went from August 2010 to May of 2014.
Okay. In that time, I believe you started speedrunning at some point in this time.
So technically, I'll give you the kind of brief synopsis of that. I technically, my first ever speedrunning endeavors were in 2008, 2009.
Okay.
I had tried a couple of speedruns of Ratchet and Clank. Didn't really click with me at the time. But I remember the first game I ever really speedran was Super Meat Boy. I did individual levels, and I tried to get just top 50 on the Xbox Live leaderboard for every level. And I think if I didn't get every single level in the top 50, I got pretty darn close. And then I did some light speedruns of a game called Shadow Complex.
It's a great game.
I really loved that game. I haven't played it in over a decade, but I remember having a ball with it. And then I did a couple of speedruns of Up Your Arsenal, Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal, in late 2012, early 2013. So yes, I was in college at that point, but I didn't really take to the hobby proper until October of 2014 after I had graduated.
So you start after you graduate.
Yes.
Let me ask you about, when did the Twitch part of it happen for you? When did Twitch and being a live streamer on Twitch, doing the speedruns, when did that coalesce?
So a lot of Twitch stuff for me was stuff that it was kind of incidental to the hobby proper. I knew I wanted to speedrun, and the easiest way of speedrunning was to live stream your gameplay. And so I kind of used Twitch as a makeshift video recording software, I guess you could call it. So I didn't really ever have plans to become a live streamer. It was just something that I did to pass the time, because at the time I was basically just working crappy dead-end jobs. You can't get jobs in opera for a long time. I'm actually around the age where I would start getting jobs, but of course due to the coronavirus, the entire world of opera is completely blown up, and will not be coming back to its full force for probably at least until late 2021, if ever. And I know that's a very pessimistic take to say if ever.
I did want to ask you about this.
Sure.
I want to come back to this.
Yeah, we can get back to that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to be clear, I started Twitch because I kind of had nothing else to do. I was working, like, I think I worked at like a bagel shop for a few months, and then it was the worst job in the history of jobs that I've ever had to this day. And so I left after about 2 months, and then I worked at a record store for about a year. And in that time, I didn't really have anything else to do in my free time, so I just played video games. It's the one thing I always loved doing as a kid. And I hadn't really given a serious effort into anything since high school. When I feel like calling myself a top level rock band player is a little bit disingenuous, but I was certainly near the top of the rhythm gaming world. Never good enough to keep up with the big boys, but always good enough to still try to do some cool stuff.
It does feel like you have an unfair advantage for the singing component when you have a degree from Carnegie Mellon in vocal performance. It feels unfair for you to like participate in like the softball league, the karaoke night and all that stuff. That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, but it's always fun, and it's
you go
funny
there
that you
and
mentioned
skunk drunk college girls and singing like Barbie Girl. Yeah, I'm sure it is when you sing it like way better than they could.
Well, that's the thing. I actually love karaoke. Karaoke, I think, is always such a great time because no one ever does or should care about how they sound during karaoke. And, it's fun to go up there and obviously, I love going up there and just singing songs that I have no other avenue of singing. Like when am I ever going to be able to sing anything by Usher in a professional setting in my entire life? The answer is never. So it's just, it's fun. Like I find my own fun in karaoke because it's just a way for me to kind of enjoy what I love without having to worry about the professional aspect of it, about having to sound good all the time while I do it.
That's fair. I will not talk about what I sing when I go to the karaoke bar. I will not disclose this information. It's for me and the denizens of the Empty Chicks restaurant at 3 a.m. in upstate New York. It's just for me and the four walls. Let's leave it there. Well, I guess what I'm curious about is because I hear that you're shy. I hear that you're reclusive. You get to Carnegie Mellon, it's the same way, but it feels like things are opening up for you, maybe because people are more accepting and maybe more in line with how you feel about things. Like as someone that grew up in a very conservative part of the area, like New York is considered a blue state, but I feel like, and this is true for people that live abroad, like my friends in other countries don't understand that New York City is a small portion of the state. The state is mountains and woods and preserved wilderness and small towns along big roads to the city, which is skyscrapers and Empire States of Mind and Yankees and Knicks and Giants and Jets. Oh my. And then going to a place that's like, I think most people should have name recognition, at least with your institute, right? Like, if I said the name of my alma mater, people would be like, who? And I'd be like, let's go Senators, right? Because no one has ever heard of my school. So you have name recognition and you're in a different area. When did you really find your voice? And did Twitch help? And, like, because you're not anyone listening to this should not be fooled. You are not an introvert now. Or maybe you are, but you're a performative one.
Yes, I do still consider myself an introvert at the core of my being. I still think that the time I feel the most relaxed and the most at peace and the most myself is when I'm just, sitting in my room, stoned off my ass, lying in bed, playing music.
I thought we'd get there.
But I think that a big thing for me, like you said, it is learning how to be comfortable in your own skin. And I think that that's something that a lot of my fellow introverts can take away, hopefully from some of my experiences, is that unfortunately, introverts don't have it easy in this world. Oftentimes, this is a world that is run by people who are effective communicators. And I was very lucky. I feel like a lot of my life, I kind of min-maxed my luck, where a lot of it was spent being very, very unlucky in certain situations, but there's very specific parts of my life that I wouldn't trade for anything. Despite growing up in what I would consider kind of a crappy place to live, I had the good fortune of having a very supportive family, a very loving family, that even though we didn't have a whole lot, we still cared for each other a lot. And that was always enough, but when I found, even going as this shy introverted person, didn't really know how to talk to others, didn't really know how to play well with others because I spent so much time alone. I was lucky enough to get into an a cappella group, an all-male a cappella group called the Carnegie Mellon Originals. You can look them up. We've got a bunch of YouTube videos on there. And while there were certainly times and experiences that I had in that group that I really kind of despised, I think I ended up really growing to not enjoy my time in that group, and a lot of the ways that it turned my friends into kind of crappy people. But I feel like that's always what's going to happen when you're trying to balance power and friendship. But the one thing I will say is that being around all these people, these were the best friends that I had. And to this day, one of my best friend in the entire world, we met in this group, and we talk almost every single night. The past few weeks, we've been getting together every night. We watch a couple of episodes of Attack on Titan. We're trying to get ready for the next season coming up. But the big part of it was these guys helped push me, sometimes in ways that were not good, but in many ways it was times that I needed to be pushed, in different ways that I needed to be pushed. And they kind of turned me into a person who was comfortable being social, and they showed me how to appreciate time with friendship, and in general, just we created some memorable experiences that I'll never ever forget. And that's always one of the lessons I try to tell my Twitch stream. And I do think that Twitch has helped me become even more comfortable in my own skin over the years. It's certainly helped a lot. I do think the very beginnings were that instead of focusing on video games and focusing on Twitch, I focused on the people around me. And that is a lesson I think a lot of people need to take away. There is always time to live stream yourself playing video games, but if you want to be good at it, if you want to be like a charismatic streamer, you need to have experiences, you need to have stories, you need to be able to relate to people. And if I hadn't had this experience in this a cappella group, I definitely would have had a much harder time relating to people throughout college. And I do wonder what I would have been like had I gone into math instead of music, because I did get accepted to all these schools for both. And I think that it would have just been incredibly detrimental to me in the long run, because I wouldn't have had these same experiences with all these wonderful people, and my voice colleagues as well. My voice major friends were all social butterflies. And so I kind of had to learn, even though I was never a drinker, I was never a smoker in college, you do what you can to fit the party atmosphere. And, I'm not recommending that people do anything that's illegal, obviously. But I'm also not stupid. I know that people do stuff. And of course, I'm just going to say that, if you ever do something that you're not sure about, always make sure that you're around people you trust, not just because they'll take care of you and you'll feel more comfortable, but because it's a bonding experience. Mm-hmm. So I am very lucky in so much that I had a great group of close friends all throughout college, who kind of helped me see the error of my ways in a lot of ways, and help me come out of my shell a lot more. So that was definitely the beginnings for me.
I have two things I want to ask you.
Sure.
I believe I have found a video from the originals.
Yes.
Are they wearing white shirts and blue ties?
Yes, that is us.
I
We are the
see you.
originals. Uh-huh.
I'm going to make one comment.
Of course, yes.
And by the way, you all look very sharp. But I've looked at 3 videos which I can easily identify, and with no disrespect to the other people in this group at this time at the fine institute that is Carnegie Mellon. If you shined a light against these people, it would come through the other side. This is what I call translucent whiteness. Like shadow puppetry, but we can see your blood run through your veins when you hold a bright light up against it. And then, and in no disrespect to you, you're the tan one. And even though you're not very tall, although it doesn't look like this shirt fits you very well.
No, I grew up as a relatively poor kid. No, that was my shirt. I basically just got whatever shirt I could afford, regardless of size.
Well, now you're making me feel bad.
No,
it would have been way
bad.
funnier if it was your brother's shirt, but that's neither here nor there. Listen, I'm not gonna. It is easily findable, but very interesting stuff. The second thing that I want to ask you, because we're talking about doing experiences that you're not sure of, do it around people that you trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to parlay this before we get back to your rest of your journey through speedrunning.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about GDQ really quick.
Sure.
Because I feel like that's advice that a lot of people could use. And I want to be very, very clear. This is not a segment meant to blame victims for things that happen to them.
Sure.
But most of what I hear about that happens at GDQ is from people that don't have a lot of social experience finding themselves in very bad situations.
Yes.
Also, that's not to excuse predators for being predatory.
Yes.
I want to be very clear. I'm specifically talking about, for example, people that don't drink, but then go on night 1, get so drunk they pass out, and then wind up in the hallway of the hotel with no pants, which is a real thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not among friends. And that's why they woke up covered in their own vomit with no pants, because they were in a party they shouldn't have been at. So I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about that and maybe your thoughts on a lot of the GDQ rancor that has been brought up recently.
I think that's a very interesting conversation point, and I actually really would love to give my perspective on that. I will say that I am definitely in the demographic who parties a lot at GDQ.
No way.
Yeah, I know. Shocking.
I don't believe
it. I was actually not much of a partier in college, but I lived in the party house, funny enough. So I experienced my fair share of parties because I was around them all the time. I was never one who loved getting so hammered I couldn't think straight.
I find that so interesting. You were like an active bystander.
Yes, that was definitely my role for a lot of it. However, the culture surrounding GDQ and partying, it's I think it's such a complicated issue, but I think it's one that is. I think it requires nuance, and I think it requires communication. And that's why I think this is such a problem, is because many parties are not communicating with one another. What kind of happens at these events, and this is no knock to GDQ at all, because they run a very tight ship, and they have a lot to worry about over the course of a week, but they kind of don't really map out what is or is not allowed very well. And they kind of just play situations by ear. If something happens, get all the details, figure it out, make your delegation, and then that's the decision that they roll with. Now, I think what that creates is a scenario in which people don't necessarily understand what they could be doing better as purveyors of the event. or not, purveyors is not the right word. I guess just attendees of the event. And so what ends up happening is people, because speedrunning is a hobby that attracts a lot of people who don't have the best social skills, because it is largely a hobby for where people spend a lot of time by themselves in a room, maybe talking to a couple of people online, but largely just kind of being alone with their own thoughts and in their own gameplay. A lot of these people don't have the best social skills. And a lot of these people, they were never super active partiers. And, you know, like I was saying, I wasn't much of a partier myself, but I was around a lot of people who were. And so I knew the etiquette. I knew the things you weren't allowed to do. I knew the things that like the implied yeses and nos, and like when you have to be, you know, when you have to be fully communicative and when you just kind of have to be there for people.
You knew the rules of engagement.
Yes, that's a very succinct way of putting it. I knew the rules of engagement. But a lot of these people don't. They don't understand that, you know, people are prone to doing stupid shit when they're hammered. And I know that that's obvious. Like, everyone knows that people act dumb when they're drunk, but some of these people don't understand what it's like to actually be drunk, and they never can understand it until they're actually in the moment. And what it creates is this scenario where now you have people saying stuff like, should we be banning alcohol from GDQs because of all these sexual harassment, I guess cases sounds a bit official. That's not 100% what I mean, but these incidents, that's a good way of putting it. I think you have these incidents of people coming out and saying, I was sexually assaulted at a GDQ. And I think people kind of are, I've heard people say they want to ban alcohol at GDQs. Like, they wouldn't mind if GDQ banned alcohol. I think that's ridiculous. And I'll tell you why. Because the people who want to drink are going to drink no matter what. If they, the best thing that GDQ can do, I think, is kind of give a rundown. I mean, I know it sounds like, you know, where do they get off telling people how to behave when they're intoxicated? But I think if this is an issue, I don't think people would necessarily mind signing waivers or, like, you know, saying I'm going to be like, just an extra reminder of like, hey guys, you know, this has been an issue and we don't want this to ruin things for people. So, you know, and I don't know where you draw the line. I'm not saying I know the answer. I don't know what the right thing to do is. I just think that, like, to say that we should ban alcohol outright, I just don't think fixes the issue, because people are just going to get it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. I will say, really quick, I want to jump in.
Sure, yeah, by all means.
I will say that I think that GDQ's position on alcohol in the event spaces, at least in my few times that I've attended, has been pretty clear. Yeah. You're not allowed to have alcohol in the event spaces. Now, people do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an adult making a decision. And
I guess that's fair, yeah.
The other thing, too... No, you're fine. And the other thing, too, is that you are going to have a very hard time telling an adult what they can and cannot do in a hotel room that they pay for.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, and I know that there are younger people that go. I know that there are 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old people that go. It always takes me off guard because I expect the people that I'm in the room with to be adults. And when that's not the case, their grandmother, and who got drunk in the lobby, right? So it's a difficult task because you can't breathalyze people. Right, but I think their position on it is clear. What I think happens is that because there's nothing, you need a semi-permeable barrier where there's an area where you can drink. And I think if there was an area, not the bar, with its $20 drinks, like I've been to a few of like event parties, industry parties, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be for video games or whatever, or tech, or whatever it is. You go in, it's like, hey, here's a drink voucher. You take it you get some weird drink, right? These things are dead ass boring. And nobody wants to be there. But you've created a semi-permeable barrier where people can get some of it out in the open.
Yeah.
And then and I'm not advocating for GDQ to do this, by the way. I'm putting it out there as like something I've seen other places do.
Yeah.
The other problem is that they're very much marketing this as an event for the family. And so you can't have booze in a place where there's minors. Like, not 18-year-old minors, 3-year-old minors, like toddlers, grade school children, with their parents. Like, you can't have drunk adults roaming the halls, which they don't allow anyway. But yeah, you really do lose something when you send people off to their rooms, which is they're missing something, right? If there was a way to have parties out in the open, I think you'd have more public thing. Like, you'd have more of a thing that you didn't want to see, but it wouldn't be rape.
Yes.
It wouldn't be sexual assault. You'd have drunk people in the open, which sometimes, and I don't think GDQ would ever say this, I don't think any event would ever say this. To them, a drunk person in the event space is more embarrassing than a sexual assault in private. And again, they can say all the right things, but the appearance, a photo of that in public would be more embarrassing and untenable than something that happens allegedly behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I only use allegedly in this case because the event is using that too, right?
Yes.
The victim, the accusee, the accuser, and the event are all using that word for various levels of protection. In the event's eyes, you're going to lose sponsors, and you're going to lose your event, really, in what it is, if you have a drunk guy next to the game's done quick banner.
Sure.
As opposed to like something that happens, inconspicuously, allegedly, in a hotel room somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a very it's one of those things. It's like the dark underbelly. It's horrible to think about, but I don't think that you're wrong. I really don't. And I do think that even just creating, I think what I'm kind of circling around and what I'm kind of landing on here is that I just think there needs to be more open communication on all parties, like on or not literal parties, but on all, like, figurative, like, groups of people. I think there just needs to be more dialogue about this first and foremost, because we don't really know where to go with this. But the fact of the matter is there's so much of this that is, and that's why I've been really kind of, I've been very happy to see all these people come forward who have been victims in the past. And I don't want this to be something that people have to be ashamed about talking. But yeah, I think largely, there's just, I can't remember a single conversation that I've ever had with like in an official setting at a GDQ about this. And obviously it's outlined in the terms and conditions. It's obviously, and even just in the ethical side of life, don't assault people for any reason. It's unacceptable behavior and should never, ever be tolerated on any account. But I think that what ends up happening is people don't recognize what constitutes assault. And unfortunately, because people put themselves in these vulnerable positions where they get really drunk and they thought they could trust people, and then it turns out they can't. They don't know how to read the signs. And I think even just kind of giving people a rundown. I mean, I think literally even something as small as just like having a pamphlet attached to like your registration information. Like when you get your badge, like, here's some stuff that we want you guys to consider. Include like some sort of sheet about like talking about, even just basic, like how to recognize these sorts of behaviors out of people who want to commit these sorts of heinous acts of these sexual crimes.
And you know what, Sem? I think that's actually the best thing that they could do. Is just give people the information. It's a weird thing. We're acting like we don't do it. We act like we don't go up there into the hallways of the hotel and get blackout drunk.
Yeah.
And and in turn, the event is acting like we're not all up there doing that.
Yeah.
There are people that go into their hotel room on Saturday night that don't come out until Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is what it is. So I think giving people the information of what to look for and how to avoid certain situations would be a great start.
Yeah, and even just like emphasis on, and even for the people, you know, who are not involved in any of this and never will be, just the idea of reinforcing that we all need to look out for each other. I think if that is communicated better, that it's important for all of us to take care of one another, I think that even that little bit will help go a long way in hopefully at least addressing the issue. I mean, I don't really know. I'm not going to claim I know the answer to this. I think it would be ridiculous for me to claim something so gargantuan. But you know,
yeah,
my friends and I trust that my friends and I will always be advocates for other people, because I have been around all these people for so long that if I ever saw behavior like that in any of them, I would call them out immediately. And I know that like the other people in my friend group would do that as well. To like we would all keep each other accountable. You know, people make lapses in judgment, especially with the inclusion of alcohol, and we need to be willing to call people out before it becomes a problem. Yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of my 2 cents. I feel like the solution I've seen being thrown around this past summer of people saying no more alcohol, I think that is putting a bandage on a much deeper wound in our community that needs to be treated much more carefully.
Last thing that I'll say is that I know that there are going to be people that listen to this part and immediately say, no, this won't work, and here's why. And to you, the person that's going to write that comment, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I tell everybody who does things like that. Then come up with a better idea or a compromise, right? So it's like, well, we can't do the pamphlets because then they're admitting fault. Okay, we'll come up with something else.
Yeah.
Because too often, people will deflect balls out of the air, but they will not catch them and they will not throw them back, right? So it's like, no, that won't work. No, that won't work. No, that won't work. Okay, well, what the crux of what me and Zem are saying, Zem and I, excuse me, is that there needs to be a solution. If we don't know what the solution is, that means that there needs to be a dialogue of what we can do. So that's where I want to leave that.
Yeah, and of course, you know, I also want to be clear that I'm not trying to lay any blame on GDQ as well. I think that they try their best. You know, at the end of the day, there's still a startup of sorts. They're obviously much larger now, but you know, these are all still people who are figuring things out one convention at a time. And I know there are a lot of people who have some hard feelings about GDQ. I am not one of those people. I think they do a great job given the circumstances. But obviously, this is something that is happening. It's an unfortunately, it is a scenario that is happening on their watch. And it sucks that they have to deal with it. But at the end of the day, we need them to deal with it. We need them to be the people who step up and say, you know, this is how we're going to approach this. We need that because no one else is going to do it for them. So I just kind of want to say that, like, you know, I, if it sounds like I'm trying to throw blame at GDQ, I'm not. But I am saying that the unfortunate reality is that now this is something that they are going to have to deal with.
All right. Well, I want to change, and I want to end on something a little more lighthearted.
Sure.
You are a dirty, rotten wrestling heel, and everybody knows it.
So, oh my goodness.
You are self-described as the hungry box of rack speedrunning. Maybe in speedrunning in general. I'm going to let you defend yourself. But I want to set the scene for some people. We are at the time of this recording, and this podcast will come out after the video comes out. Okay. So, wow, what a great video that was. I'm talking about the Ratchet & Clank Going Commando video. And when we were interviewing you, you said, you know, to the effect of, you know, me and Scotto had, like, we were heated and we didn't like each other, and it was a bit of a rivalry. But I gotta tell you, we interviewed a bunch of your friends. I'm saying your friends, but a bunch of the Rack community, Ratchet, specifically for the Going Commando video, you know, Fear and Scotto, Torpedo, and Manto, and Sneepy, and Ricky. And I have to tell you that my favorite part was that people didn't even know. Some people didn't even know. Some people were like, that was a thing? Or you have some people like Escato who's like, yeah, he didn't like me very much, but I didn't have a problem with him. That's all he said. Dude was like, Yeah, I don't really know. It didn't really feel like a big deal. So, we were set up. We were set up. You set me up.
I set
And
you up. Oh my goodness. I do
I
think. Okay, sorry. I'll let you finish.
you acted like you were gonna be this larger than life attitude era. You smell right
Uh-huh.
attitude asshole heel right. I'm gonna stomp a butthole in your ass and then run it dry. Right? You acted like that, and you did heelish things for
Mhm.
sure, and you're gonna defend yourself or dig your own grave. But I thought it was so weird. It was like, man, some people didn't even know you were a heel. Your boy Sneepy was like, oh yeah, that was a thing. I can't do an accent, but that's what he sounds like sometimes. That's your boy. He's your mod. You own Sneepy.
I own Stevie. He's my property.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess
Well,
that's
I
pretty
don't.
fair. No,
That's I don't.
I'm agreeing
Go
with
ahead.
that. I will absolutely 100% agree with that. He might not, but I agree.
All right, so go ahead. Tell the people.
I really do think, well, a lot of the people involved in the interview process, I'm trying to think. I don't even think Manto was a part of the community back then, or if he was very early in.
Yeah, I
I
don't think
know
so.
I know Ricky had kind of stopped paying attention to the community at that time. I just think a lot of the people nowadays didn't that are like relevant to the topic at hand probably just didn't. They either like, here's the thing. A lot of people in the Ratchet community back then didn't really even involve themselves with my stream very much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of people heard about this, but didn't really see it as much of a big deal because at the very least, I didn't make it like super duper public. It was just one of those things that like Scott and I knew that we kind of had like a bit of heated moments with each other.
So tell the people what you did, you dirty, rotten, cheating, stealing son of a gun. Tell the people what you did. This will be. He's gonna do a brief version. If you want the full version, go watch the Speed Docs episode on Ratchet and Clank Going Commando, where it'll be covered in much more detail there, with interviews from Zem and Scotto, so you can get the whole story. But go ahead.
Essentially, what happened was there was another runner in the community named Scott Abozo, and we both share the same first name of Scott, funnily enough. And we basically butt heads a lot because, you know, we ran a lot of the same categories and we would kind of take records from each other. And sometimes we got a little passive aggressive about it. And some things were I tended to be a bit more on the aggressive side. He tended to he would, whenever he would do things, it would be a little bit more on the passive aggressive side. And so I think that's a bit why people kind of don't really know a whole lot about it. It was never like this super explosive thing. It was just kind of like we would make these comments at each other that were clearly not meant to be in good faith. And at the very least, I read them that way. I think because like I remember it all kind of spiraled off when I got a world record in the trifecta any percent. So all ratchets 1, 2, and 3 any percent back to back to back.
Mm-hmm.
I got world record, and basically we had kind of, you know, we'd been butting heads in the battlefield of speed gaming for a while, and so maybe there was a bit of tension there, maybe not. But Scott basically made a comment on the video about how I kind of only got world record because I was playing on PS3, which was the fastest version of Rack 1 at the time, and the previous world record holder had been playing on PS2. And I kind of took that very personally, especially given how we had been like kind of exchanging blows, and it kind of set off this year and a half of us just like not being friendly at all. And we kind of like would go out of our way to, at the very least, like, I don't know, it felt like it to me. I mean, I feel like people have either forgotten about it or maybe I'm just insane. I don't know, but like I feel like it was actually I feel like it was pretty heated. I don't know where people are getting at that it was never that big of a thing because I thought
so you tell where did it go to? What was the highest heights? Where did your feud? Where was your WrestleMania blow off?
I think the peak of it was definitely I definitely said something in regards to him as a human being that was not nice at all, and I don't want to repeat it because it was something that I actually deeply regret ever saying, and I don't think it's something that anybody should call somebody else. It wasn't anything. It wasn't like a slur or anything like that. It was just like I basically called into question his mental acumen. That's the best way I'll say it.
Did you accuse him of not having perfect pitch?
That's I don't have to accuse anybody. I know. Okay, when someone does not have perfect pitch,
Are you trying
know.
to reignite the beef? Are you trying to put the beef back on the grill?
No,
Scotto,
no.
you heard it here first, brother. You heard it here first. You and your tone deaf ass.
Well, it's actually very funny because as of things have been very, I would say, lately a little drama free for the most part. Up until the very very recent past, actually, it's kind of funny. As of last night, or as of of this recording, last night there was a very bad situation that just happened in the Ratchet Discord once again, where it's just unfortunately, we're plagued by infighting over years of hard feelings and years of people not being able to resolve their differences. And unfortunately, sometimes it comes out in very bad ways. And for a while, a lot of it was definitely because I was a bit of a rabble rouser. I've always been the kind of person who responded to negative reinforcement. So I always feel like I work at my best when I have something to prove. Sure. And so the way that I behaved and the way that I treated people in the Discord for a very long time was in a very similar manner. I would constantly call people out if I didn't think they were working hard enough. I would constantly kind of challenge people. I try to poke the bear a little bit and egg them on. And it was never, something that I tried to do in bad faith. It was something that I did because I genuinely cared about a lot of the people. But I think because we all come from such different cultures and we all are very, very different people kind of misunderstood my intentions a lot. And I think they thought that I was kind of trying to be this asshole who only cared about himself, who only cared about growing his stream and he would constantly try to put people down. And so I just think there's a lot of people for years who thought that I was just this douchebag who doesn't deserve his viewership, doesn't deserve to be able to make a living full-time streaming. But in the past couple of years, I feel like largely I've just kind of kept to myself. I've kind of changed my ways. I've kind of realized that doesn't really work. And that, nowadays I try to do what I can to actively support people and gas them up rather than, act in such a way that could be perceived as putting them down. That was never my intention with anybody, but sometimes it kind of felt that way to people. But unfortunately, there's some people who still don't forgive me, or they've yet to move on, and I become this target for them because it's almost like I don't know.
Let me ask you a hard question.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you deserve to be forgiven?
I don't know. I don't know. In the grand scheme of life, do I think that on my deathbed, am I going to look back and be like, should I have been nicer or like should I have been a better person?
You went all the way to the end. You're like, when I'm some 90-year-old little Jewish man, hobbling to temple on Saturday, you're just like, are you gonna be like, I really regret being mean to Sneepy that one time?
Well, Sneepy always deserved it.
Sneepy, you heard it here first. You always deserved it. In fact, what are you doing listening to this podcast? Get back to doing his laundry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Sneepy's never gonna do another Speed Doxathon again. He's gonna listen to this, be like, "Damn, what the hell did I do to CJ?" They're gonna be talking about me. I'm the new Ratchet and Clank heel in the Speedrunning Discord.
No, I CB and I we've become very good friends over the years, and I know if he is listening to this, he knows I'm not actually being serious. But I think that largely I've tried to do everything I can to become a positive force in the community. I think I've always been a proponent of attempting to pay people back, but I think, not in a negative way, more so in the positive way. But I think more importantly, I think the true sign of of change and the true sign of being better is paying it forward. Because it's easy to say you're sorry, and it's so much harder to be different and to be better.
Exactly.
And so that's what I've always tried to do. I've always tried, there were so many people for so long who said, Zem, you're the big Ratchet streamer. Why aren't you doing more for the people who want to be able to do this too? And do I think that's 100% my responsibility to create that avenue for people? No. But I also realize that if I don't do it, or if I don't try to help, nobody else is going to do it. So I've always tried to do what I can to, shout out smaller streamers, to encourage people, to give them advice if they ask for it. Mm-hmm. And I think that in general, there's just some people who, I don't really even know what it is. I mean, people have said that, like, that people are jealous of what I have, but I don't think the answer is ever that easy. I think that's if that is the truth, I think it's a very boring truth. And I'd much rather look to what could be navigated in a better way. Like I don't think people want to tear down my platform. I think they just want to feel validated. Right. I think that's what it comes down to. And I want to do what I can to help people in this community feel validated. So do I deserve forgiveness? I don't know. I think that's a person to person kind of thing. I would hope people say yes. But largely, I've kind of just learned that no matter what happens in this world, there's always going to be people who don't like you. And
this is very true.
And it doesn't matter why. And it can be for dumb reasons. And so, it used to eat away at me on the inside when people in the community wouldn't like me. But nowadays, I realize that I don't have to really care. That's not something that I have to worry about, both as a person and as a professional. It's like if 3 people in the community don't like me, okay, the world will the birds will, the sun will rise, the birds will keep chirping, and I'll move forward. But I do think it's just very strange that there are some people who just like can't move past things. And I just want this community to be cohesive, and there's times where we really are, and there's a lot of times where we're really not. And I think the future of this community and how much we can grow, especially with, if this is coming out after the Speed Docs video comes out, that means that we're pretty close to the release of Rift Apart, the new Ratchet game. And this is an avenue for our community to become what I've always believed it could be. And I think many people as well have always believed it could be. And I think the only thing holding us back at this point is ourselves. And the infighting, the hard feelings, the putting people down to raise ourselves up, I think it's something that has to end, not just for the sake of my stream or whatever, but for the sake of the community at large. I just don't see the point anymore.
Right.
And that's not, I don't think that's anything about my personal growth as much as it is me realizing what it takes to create a community. And so, I don't know, when these sorts of situations happen, and I'm not going to go into detail because we don't need to really go into detail about this, but
of course not, right.
Essentially, when these sorts of situations happen where people put themselves over the community, it hampers everybody. A rising tide lifts all boats, and the opposite is true as well. When a small group of people puts themselves over the community, the rest of the community suffers as well. And so, I'm trying to do what I can to I don't know, try to create more love for this community in general. But I think we're not always on the same page, and that's the growing pains of being in a community. But I don't think we can really give up. I think we have to keep pushing forward to what we believe can make things better. And I hope that regardless of what happens with this situation, which, I mean, by the time this is released, who knows if people even remember it, but it doesn't matter what the situation is. You can replace this situation with any number of situations. And I think the outlook should still be the same of, like, you have to learn how to work through this shit and try to be better for it. And I think people in general should never be afraid of standing up for what's right either. So I don't know. I think I don't really know where I'm going with this. I feel like at this point I'm just kind of rambling.
Well, there was a little bit of rambling.
Yeah,
there was a little bit. You were circling the drain for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm here to help you. I'm here to jump in.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Something I always believed to be true, a motto that I've lived my life on, My dad always said, I'm from Missouri, that's the show me state. Before anyone jumps in, no, he was not from Missouri. It's a Clint Eastwood movie line. But the answer is, don't tell me you're going to clean your room. Go clean your room.
Yeah.
Show me your clean room, right? Don't tell me that you're going to be better. Don't tell me you're going to be different. Be better. Be different, right? To put it way more elegantly than one Clint Eastwood movie did, I believe it was The Outlaw Josie Wales, for anyone curious. How about acta non verba? It means actions or deeds, not words.
Mm-hmm.
So, do the thing. Don't say you're going to do the thing. Don't aspire to be different and then be different. I think that. Well, I'll tell you what. I forgive you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I know you were waiting for that, so I just wanted to get that out of the way.
Yes, absolutely. Also, I do want to point out that in regards to you saying, "Show me your clean room," my room has never been cleaner than it is right now.
Did you make the bed?
Okay, we're not going to talk about the bed, but everything else is immaculate.
I believe in you. I believe in you, Zim. I do want to say a few things before we wrap up. Sure. I feel like that last thing was a great way to wrap everything up because I think this whole conversation has been a story of growth and your personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
If we ever have you on again, I think going more into the nitty-gritty about speedrunning stuff would be cool. But honestly, this was just a great conversation. I'm glad that we got to have it. I want to really thank you specifically, for helping us so much with the original Ratchet video because I know that what you did was you said, you should talk to Ricky, right? But that was so big for us. Mm-hmm. And that was really our experience with videos before Ratchet and Clank had been that we knew people already. Mm-hmm. We didn't know anybody in Ratchet and Clank. We knew one person in Donkey Kong. And that was our entry point. We didn't know anybody. So just to have someone to be like, to put their arm around us and be like, hey, they're working on this thing. It's going to be cool. That was so big. Honestly, you have no idea. And it did so much for our confidence, too. Which I think is something that you can do, whether you know that you can do it or not. Because you are a streamer and you are known the world over. Even in remote parts of Tasmania where they only get wrestling and other kinds of wrestling, they know you. So, that did a lot for A, us, confidence, but B, it just helped the project go so much more smoothly. And you weren't very involved in that video. It's not like you're just not in the history that much. Yeah. You were there for the parts that you were there, but and you were more involved in this one, and you're going to be very involved if we ever do up your arsenal. Wink, wink.
Oh, don't you do this to me right now. It is too late at night for me to be this excited.
Dude. Well, listen, a little bit of the piffy always put me to sleep. I'm gonna wrap up by saying, just thank you for that. Thank you for helping us with that video and this video. I mean, they both did just what it did for us and our confidence and making other projects easier for us, but also what it did for the channel because Ratchet and Clank's a great video. You should go watch it. The original Ratchet and Clank. Go watch the Going Commando video, which should be out now.
Yeah.
It's a great video, by the way. Great video.
I can't wait to, obviously by the time this is out, it will have already been out, but I'm so excited to see the final product. As of today, November 23rd, 2020.
Put me on blast.
No, I'm not trying to put you on blast at all. I'm just trying to give context. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm so excited to see the final product. I mean, you were telling me right before we started this that you finished all the interviews, and now I imagine the editing phase and the can finally begin.
We have a script in the works, and it's something. It's going to be a good one. We have lots of great videos, but this one is going to be special. It was really nice to kind of get back into the Ratchet community a little bit and kind of explore this a little more because everything it is an interconnected story. Mm-hmm. They all are. And it's hard when you tell the story of one game, right? Or one category. It can be limiting. So this kind of gives us time for you to do something else. And we'll do something special for Up Your Arsenal, don't you worry. That's going to do it for us. Do you have anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, of course I want to, thank you, CJ, and I want to thank, Speed Docs as a organization as well, because it has been such a treat to get to know you and CC better, just not just as content creators, but as people. I think you both have been really, really wonderful, both in what you do and how you've treated our community. And I know that when you announced that you were going to do Ratchet 2, everyone was so excited because we just have such a fond memory of working with you guys the first time. And, of course, if you ever want to tackle any of those wink, wink, nudge, nudge projects, I will always be in your corner. And, even in projects that don't involve Ratchet and Clank in any capacity, I'll always be a supporter of you guys. And, of course, I really appreciate having you having me here tonight. I love doing these sorts of things, even though I do tend to ramble. I feel like I've rambled more than I usually do in these things, but I also, I think we're all dealing with quarantining in different ways. And for me, it's been a little tough not having people to talk to about, these sorts of topics. So
Yeah,
I tend to get a little bit more excited than I usually would, and I tend to get a little bit more off focus.
It's awesome, man.
My English teachers always told me all throughout grade school that I had a problem with focus. And maybe that's something that I should get looked at by a professional. But for the time being, I'm glad that you have you're around here to keep me on track.
Hell yeah, man. So, all right, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing. We're gonna plug your stuff.
Oh yes.
You can find him on twitch.tv. That's twitch.tv/Xem92. Xem is spelled XEM for those keeping score at home.
Yes. If you're a lot of the Germans pronounce it Xem. A lot of the
It's objectively wrong.
A lot of the Spanish speakers pronounce it Shem. I've gotten the whole gambit of but it is Zem, yes.
Right. So
Simply Zem.
Simply Zem, there we go. You can follow him on Twitter at Zemmypoo.
Yes.
XEMMY, that's M as in Mary, two of those, YPOO as in poo. Oh, poo, it's raining.
And if you ever have me back on here, I can't wait to give you the backstory of Zemmy Poo. There is actually a backstory to that.
We have to save something for part 2.
Exactly.
The sequel. We got to run it back.
We got to run it back.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, everybody, for supporting the show. It is on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and YouTube. It is uploaded every Wednesday. If you like this episode, check out the other ones. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope everyone listening has a great rest of your day.